Welcome, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? Wow, feels so nice to be back. Back in the mode of teaching Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. It's been kind of a wild ride the last month and change, and I feel very blessed and honored that I can be here tonight to continue in teaching the holy words of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And I will say that, for those people that have reached out to me and sent me a lot of different messages about various topics that have been going on in the last month, but specifically, first of all, number one, I just got back from Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem, I was Zoche. I had the merit to make it there. Obviously, once COVID opened up and I had the ticket, the green light to get in, I went without fail, and I literally took the next flight possible that I could actually get into Eretz Yisrael. So those people that were watching somewhat of my journey, my goal originally was to really put a lot of information out there, a lot of videos out there, and unfortunately and fortunately, I'll tell you that there was too many moments that I had to keep for myself selfishly. And you can't share everything with everybody. And for me, from what you guys saw, maybe you saw a little smidget of a good part of my trip there. But one thing I can tell everybody, I think it's getting more and more evident as the days go by, right, is that it's really getting time to get close to move to Eretz Yisrael. If you've been thinking about it, maybe it's time to really look into it a little bit more deeper. And for me personally, I left there very inspired and very much ready, so to speak, to get there and start that process. Now, how I'm going to get there, how it's going to work with family and all the logistics and work and this and that, that's going to be the hard part, right? But at least there's a difference between not knowing and knowing. And the truth of the matter is, whether we all get there by choice or whether we get there by force, it's about to happen anyways. So we really need to really hunker down and think about that, because Mashiach's about to come and is knocking and knocking on the door. And as it's evident already now more than ever, right? The Chevle Mashiach, the birth pangs of Mashiach, are getting stronger and stronger, right? They say that before Mashiach comes, the birth pangs of Mashiach are going to get shorter and stronger, right? Shorter and stronger, which means we're going to see more things happen, okay? And although COVID and this whole process has been definitely a very serious part of this process, right? With now the new aspect of war in place, and building up to probably become even bigger than what it is now. You're seeing what's going on right now on a Eretz Yisrael level, and we're going to see that. Unfortunately, I really hope it doesn't happen, but this is part of the process. And of course, not to mention the fact that we have lost one of the greatest tzaddikim, not the greatest tzaddikim that was living alive today, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. And that is a very significant thing. This is not a game. This is not just another person who passed away. This is the greatest tzaddik that was currently alive in our generation that everybody knew. This is the guy, okay? It's not simple, and I know that I'm talking a little bit more than I should in regards to the actual Torah class tonight, but you have to know that this is massive, and of course that happens right after Purim. Not a simple thing, and you can see, and this is the first thought that crossed my mind. You can see the impact of a tzaddik just alone. The guy, this person, was so holy, right? He's the foundation. When we speak about a tzaddik being the isod, he's the foundation that holds everything up, right? And talk about it just on a simple level. You see it already with what's been going on tonight, right? Within hours ago, we just saw specifically 5 people or should I say maybe 4 or 5, unfortunately lost their lives in a terrorist attack. Where? In Bnei Barak. Bnei Barak, the same place that Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky lived, right? And we see that a tzaddik like this, he leaves the world, fills, a void is now empty, it's there. And now this is the situation where you start seeing and you appreciate, what this is all about, how a person like that can protect your city, he can protect the state, he can protect Am Yisrael just for who he is. So it's very, very intense right now. It's a very intense time. And I think we all need to just really start getting really more and more focused, even though many of you are and putting in the efforts with getting close to Hashem in whatever mechanism it's possible. One of the main things you have to know that will save you and save all of Am Yisrael from the Chevlei Mashiach is to get connected to Hashem, to do teshuvah, learn Torah, pray to Hashem from your heart, and do everything possible to be close to Him. There's no other methodology. It's that simple. And for many people, although they're trying, Hashem appreciates everything you're already doing. You really got to make that extra stronger effort to do just a little bit more. And if you knew that from a perspective of a football game, you're inside the 5-yard line and we're about to score, right? You got to come up with whatever possible way to get inside the end zone. And this is exactly what's going on right now. And that's the intensity and that's the effort that people have to make. And when I got back from Israel and, feeling what I felt already there, I smelled a lot of, like I said, Mashiach is definitely coming. It's definitely in the air. And Eretz Yisrael is prime place, as we've learned in this chapter, which is going to lead into what we're talking about right now with this chapter. Eretz Yisrael is the land of Emet. It's the land of truth. It's the land where you can be who you want to be, who you really are. The land of truth, who you are, who we are. We're the Bnei Yisrael. We're the sons of Yaakov. Okay? Yaakov represents truth. And this is what it's all about, guys. We have to learn that is our home. That is our land. We are living right now in Galut. We are in exile. Do not kid yourself. Miami, as great as of a city as it is, I sell this city, okay? I sell real estate here. Miami is the best place. But it's the truth. When I got back from Israel, I was just once again reminded that we are not in reality, okay? We are not in reality. We are living in a place that, although we try very hard and we do what we got to do to get connected to God through being here in South Florida, or around, I should say, I should be fair, right? There's a lot of people from all over the world that will listen to this class. There's nothing like being in the land of Israel, and that's a land of truth, and you feel it when you're there, and you know who you are when you're there. And here, although the Lubavitcher Rebbe said very, I heard this the other day, I was so amazed by that, but Lubavitcher Rebbe said that Miami is going to have a very special place in the time of Geula. And you're seeing it, right? We're seeing how Miami's become that last place before we all got to go to Eretz Yisrael. It's here. It's very obvious, okay? But this is not our end goal. Our end goal is to be there, not here, right? So I know I probably just lost like 3 clients, but that's okay. Maybe I'll help clients move to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe that'll be the end goal. But that's really what I wanted to say. There is a video that Bezrat Hashem, if I can show you guys, is kind of unbelievable. I'm kind of still processing it myself. In 2015, I went to go visit Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, Zichro Lebracha, and his message to me to move to Eretz Yisrael was very evident already in 2015. And I kind of put it in my back of my mind. But right before Shabbat, I saw the actual video itself. Before I had seen a picture, I forgot that I had a video of it. And that video is like eye-opening. So there's a lot to be said about that. And maybe after we're done with the class, maybe I'll be able to show the video if I can pull it up and find it here on this laptop. I'm not sure. But Bezrat Hashem, I hope that anybody who's listening here today can get some sort of chizuk from what I'm saying. There's a lot more to say in it, but I guess we're going to get down to the actual Torah itself. Also, I'm seeing here that we are experiencing. I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We have Rabbi Wallerstein, very well-known Rav, who does incredible things in the world of Torah. He needs a serious refuah shlema. And his Hebrew name is Rav Wallerstein, is Zechariah Shimon HaKohen ben Ciro. He should have a complete refuah shlema. And also we are going to learn in memory of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zichrono Livracha, may his neshama have an aliyah. And as well, we're going to be learning in memory of my mother, Devorah Fega Bashmuel, Zichrono Livracha, and Menachem Mendel ben Elchanan, Zichrono Livracha. One more thing, one more public announcement. I just want to say, Bezrat Hashem, there's going to be this class, and there's going to be one more class next week, and then we're heading into Pesach. After Passover, I'm going to do something very unique and different. I'm going to open up the floor to people around South Florida if they want to start hosting these classes. I think it's important that these classes not just be out there from a lighthouse perspective, but I kind of want to get out there to the homes, bringing more unique people, and really get this out there on a bigger level. I think people need to be exposed to this stuff. And like I said, we need to do whatever we can to connect to whoever's possible. So if you are in South Florida and you want to host, I have not sent my messages yet out to all the public groups, but whoever's here right now, I already have a couple people that texted me about this, and I think it's a great idea. So Bezrat Hashem, stay tuned for that, as we'll be making a nice Likutey Moharan tour around South Florida, and try to light up as many people as possible here in South Florida. And at the end of the day, the biggest end goal is to connect to Hashem and to bring Mashiach b'mehera b'yameinu. So with that being said, let's rock and roll, guys. All right, so here we go. We are now learning Likutey Moharan chapter 47. We are now in section 6. Now I want to tell you something to give you a quick backdrop. I can go ahead and start bringing you a whole recap of this whole chapter. And for me to do that is not as easy. But Reb Nassan of Breslov, who is an incredible tzaddik, and I love him like crazy. All this is coming up is literally him taking the words of Reb Nachman. He kind of redid the teaching and he re-brought it back and he like remixed it, so to speak, into a way where he's kind of recapping a lot of what we learned. I really recommend, if you have the opportunity, if you're in the WhatsApp group, watch class 1, 2, and 3, because there's a lot of details involved and a lot of concepts and ideas. The basic concepts, if I want to just kind of bring it down to you, is like this. This is the class about what? If you ever wanted to lose weight, this is the class. Why? Because Rabbi Nachman begins and he talks about this idea that when a person is into this concept of wanting to overeat, eating because I just want to have that steak, because I want to eat, because I want to fulfill my needs, right? And I'm not eating because, I need to eat so I can serve Hashem, or I need to eat because I need to say a blessing. Like, that's the good way of eating. We're eating just because it's all about the food. It's all about that. Rabbi Nachman says a very scary statement, and he says specifically, a person who is into that desire of eating that kind of a level, judgment is going to fall upon you. Poverty is going to fall upon you, and it's going to lead to shame. Okay? Because you want to overeat. On the flip end, if you can learn how to break your desire for eating on that level, I'm not telling you shouldn't eat food. I'm telling you breaking that desire to eating. I'm saying to you that if you have a plate of food, right? I'm not going to have a full plate, and then I'm going to come back and have a second plate, right? And eat until like I'm stuffed. Like that's the opposite. If you can break that, if I know I'm going to serve myself one plate full of food and I'm good, like I'm full, but I'm not like, oh my God, like I'm good, right? You break that desire, what happens? There's a concept of divine countenance. Favor from Hashem is going to come upon you to the extent that even a person who does that, Hashem will perform miracles through you, okay? AKA, that's where we find tzaddikim that don't eat a lot of food at all, right? You notice that if you look at a tzaddik, many of them are very skinny. Why is that? Because they don't eat a lot of food. Why is that? Because they don't say a blessing to eat. They eat to bless. You understand the difference? Like that's what they do, right? And God says, I perform miracles through you if you can do that. right? So automatically off the bat, if you're already thinking about how you eat, what you eat, etc., think about this. I definitely, again, go back into the tape. We'll watch class 1, 2, and 3, and you'll understand. But we're going to talk a lot of the things today about all these topics. Now, as we learn in Rabbi Nachman of Breslov's works, right, it's all about plug and plays. It's about concept connected to concept, connected to concept. And Rabbi Nachman shows you how everything is all connected, right? So if you're looking at the concept of being a person who does not overeat, you are connected to something called the truth. Basically, somebody who's overeating, he says, you are not connected to truth. If you learn how to eat properly, you are connected to truth. That concept of truth, he talked about it, is its connection to what? To the land of Israel. The land of Israel represents truth. Yaakov Avinu represents truth. He spoke about a Kabbalistic idea called Ze'er Anpin. We spoke about this. This is the 6 spirot that are in the chart. They make up the persona called Ze'er Anpin. That represents truth. Hashem looking at you, divine countenance. Hashem seeing you. You want Hashem to look at you. That represents truth. So we spoke about all these things. We spoke about the concept of tefillin, how tefillin also represents truth, represents Yaakov Avinu, etc. So now, the last part we spoke about was the idea how Hashem has the ability to create a new heaven and a new earth, right? So by person being able to learn how to eat properly, again, we learn this in detail with psukim, etc., by you breaking that desire for eating, miracles and wonders are made through you, right? Unbelievable stuff, really geschmack. It's been a month and a half. Let's jump back in. Let's get back into this Torah, and let's try to bring some incredible ideas into our lives so that we can get closer to the Tzaddik Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and as well, most importantly, as well to Hashem. So we are now on 47.6. So now we see here, let me 1 second here, let me get us set up here. Okay. So Reb Nassan says like this. Gam Zorat HaTorah katafti mitchila be'atzmi, right? Rabbi Nassan is saying, I first recorded this lesson as well on my own. Venitu b'kama dvarim mevorim yoter, and some things are more fully clarified into it. Gam siyum perush hamikra v'achaltam. So when Rabbi Nachman was talking about this concept, this pasuk of the explanation of v'achaltam, which is v'achalta v'sabata, about the concept of being satiated. Next are kan b'lishon hakadosh. He says, so thus that which one lacks, the other reveals. Meaning whatever you didn't get from the first part that we learned about, Reb Nassan here is to clarify everything. And therefore I've inserted the following copy of this version, which I recorded on my own. Very nice. So here we go. So now he brings you again the pasuk, the famous pasuk we started it all off. Right? Which means you will eat and be satiated, and you're going to praise the name of God, your Lord, who performed such wondrous deeds. Never again will my people be ashamed. Remember, this is the pasuk that we learn that when we eat bread, we bless Hashem. Okay? So now Rav Nassan begins and he says, when someone is free of the desire for eating, he can be a miracle worker. Are you hearing this? On the complete opposite, when someone is so steeped into the desire for eating, all you want to do is eat. It's a sign that you're a liar. That's right. Why? Because we just said before, truth equals somebody who is not looking to get like overeating, and the opposite is falsehood, meaning someone who does overeat. He says, even a tzaddik, even a righteous person who is already free of the desire for eating. We're talking about a person who understands this concept, and yet he doesn't have this crazy desire to eat. And if he fell from his level, imagine, and he succumbs to the desire for eating, right? One day he comes to Miami. The guy lives in Israel, comes to Miami. They take him out to a nice steak restaurant, and he's like, wow, that looks unbelievable. And then what does he do? He overeats. Siman sheyatza sheker mipiv. It's a sign that falsehood has issued from his lips, meaning it could be that from that you should know that kind of a person, something that's not all emet, not all true, has left his lips. Big statement. It also shows that that from above, this specific person, he has judgments that have fallen upon him. As we mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, that judgments will fall upon you if you overeat. And it's also an indication of poverty. We spoke about the idea what poverty was. When I'm in a table and you're in a table and you order a steak and I order a steak, and at the end of the day, I finish my food and you're still eating, and then let's say you're kind of like still, let's say 3/4 into your steak, and you're like, are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat that? Right? And now I'm like literally begging on you for food, right? That's a sign of poverty. Not like I have to ask you for food. No, that's not okay. That's not good. That's a sign of embarrassment also, right? That's what he's talking about. The ha'inyan, the hinektiv, and the matter is also like this, as we learned in Pasuk in the book of Devarim. Ve'achalta, ve'savata, ubarachta. Famous Pasuk. And you will eat, and you will be satiated and blessed. The Pasuk that deals with Birkat Hamazon. So it says here, apparently, from this comes the argument of the evil inclination that one has to eat and be satiated. You should fill yourself and afterwards bless God. Look at the pasuk. The pasuk is very clear. You will eat and be satiated and blessed. So obviously, I'm gonna look at that pasuk and go, yeah, you want me to say Birkat Hamazon? You want me to bless Hashem? No problem. I will bless Hashem, but I have to be satiated. I have to be full. That's your Yetzer Hara. Think about this, because this happens to everybody, and don't kid yourself, right? Sometimes we see the food and we're like, I have to finish everything on the plate. Or maybe you're like, I'm paying for this amount of food, whatever it is, it's a very expensive meal, I don't know. I have to finish everything on my plate, right? And therefore, when I'm full and I feel satiated, now I'm gonna bless Hashem, right? That's your Yetzer Hara. That's not okay. And this is what our sages taught. Ktiv, asher lo isa fanam. Our sages taught, it's written, God who shows no countenance. Uktiv, isa Hashem panav elecha. And then the other pasuk is, will I not favor them? After I said, and you will eat and be satiated and blessed. And yet they're stringent with themselves from an olive's worth and egg's worth. What are we talking about here? We spoke about this in the beginning of chapter 1, right? There's two ways you can bless Hashem. You're talking about one way is the obvious. Hey, I'm satiated, I'm full, I'm going to do Birkat Hamazon. Great. So that's one thing. Now there's a famous midrash that we learned earlier. Hashem says, how could I not favor the Jewish people? Why? Because it says, and they're stringent with themselves from an olive's worth to an egg's worth. The rabbis came up with a halacha. They came up with the law. The law is, what does it take for a person to do Birkat Hamazon? And their answer was, as long as they eat an olive size of a bread, a kazayit, or a kibetza, or an egg-sized volume of bread, that's all you need to eat to bless Hashem. Hashem goes, that's not a lot of food, okay? So God goes, the fact that they just eat that little bit of amount, that's what the rabbis came up with. That's the way to do it. That's halakha. And that's all you have to eat. Hashem says in the Midrash, how could I not favor them? That's amazing. I will show my countenance on them. So Rab Nassim says, V'zehu remez nifla. Now this is a wonderful illusion. If the Jewish people are not so stringent, not to eat so much, they'll eat an olive's worth or an egg's worth. Then they are in that aspect of may God bestow his countenance. and there's a show of favor, right? Rab Nosson is like kind of like spelling it out for you. Don't you think don't you think that's unbelievable? The fact that I don't have to eat a lot of food to bless Hashem, but I'm doing it because I just want to bless Hashem. And Hashem's going to give me favor, right? That concept of bestowing his countenance on me. Like, that's amazing. Like, why would you not do that? Is pretty much what he's saying. But in the complete opposite, in the reverse, chas v'shalom, love those words because that shows you how serious it is. God forbid, miklal chen. Deduce from the positive the negative, right? And the flip side, if you are overeating, God's going to turn his face away from you. Judgments are going to fall upon you. Like, you don't want that. He starts upon him because when they're so steeped in the desire for eating, there is this concept of the hiding of the countenance. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. V'zehu, and he brings you a pasuk from Devarim. He starts and that's the meaning of the pasuk. I'm going to hide my countenance. Kelomar, if they're going to hide, he's going to hide his countenance. If they're going to be food for their enemies, is the actual pasuk. Kelomar, that's to say, if they're so steeped, if they're so engrossed in the desire for eating, what's going to happen? I'm going to hide my countenance. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. Now, one of the things I was thinking about when I was learning this, and then I found out later on, Rab Nosson talks about it in another beautiful book, Likutey Halachot, is let's talk about very recently the Seudah Purim. Okay, what happened with the Jewish people, guys? Think about this. Look how amazing this is, how it ties perfectly to our lesson. Okay, when the Jewish people, right, they go to the meal that Achashverosh makes. Okay, what do? They party like rock stars. They have a great time. They're partying like Achashverosh means they're eating a lot, and by the way, they're being served kosher food and drinking a lot. What happens after they go to the meal and they overeat? That's right. Judgments start falling on the Jewish people. Would you look at that? And that's when things start happening with Haman, and he gets elevated, right? And that's when the whole process of the Jewish people that he's gonna kill all of Am Yisrael, right? This is what happened right after they overate. Look in the flip side. How was it that they started to, so to speak, come back to Hashem? How did these judgments start falling away? How did Hashem's countenance come to them? Number one, they started doing teshuvah, but what did they do? They fasted for 3 days. They stopped eating food, with Mordechai leading the charge, the tzaddik himself, with Esther not eating for 3 days to go speak to King Ahasuerus. She did not eat. The Jewish people stopped eating. And what happened when that happened? The judgments fell away. Hashem made his countenance went on the Jewish people. And what happened? Miracles happened. Isn't that fascinating? So you could see that's legit. It's real. V'hineh nesiut panim hu bechinat emet. And behold, he says a show of favor is an aspect of truth, as we mentioned in the beginning of chapter 1. Truth and God looking at you, favoring you, are connected. As explained in the Kavanot meditations of the 13 attributes, which I'm going to explain. Tikkun emet hu harat panim. The rectification, the truth, is the illumination of the countenance. So we learned this also in the first class, that several things. Number one, the famous thing that we say, the 13 attributes of Hashem. We say this in Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We say this in Tachanun. If you're Sephardic or you're Chabad or Hasidic, you're going to say it. Hashem, Hashem, Kel, Rachum, Bechanun, Erech Apayim, Rav Chesed ve'emet. If you heard all of those 13, what's the middle one? Emet. Emet is the middle of the 13. So one of the things he's talking about when he says the kavanot of the meditations of the 13 attributes, that part right there, he's talking about the rectification, the truth is the illumination of the countenance. So we also spoke about the idea how in the Kabbalistic wording and concepts, the concept of truth, of emet, is connected with something called the or hapanim. Or hapanim means the light of the face. It's that shining countenance. It's the countenance that Hashem is looking at you, which is what we need, right? So that's the idea he's talking about here, that when we are in the concept of showing favor, it's like truth. You're connected, and I just showed you on a Kabbalistic level, what that kind of meant. To go into more detail, feel free to go back to other classes where I had graphs to show you all these ideas. So therefore, he continues and he says, Ki hameshuka be'achila hu rachok be'emet. And this is that we said that someone who's so engrossed in eating, hu rachok be'emet, you are far from the truth. Ki hu behastarat panim, because that countenance of Hashem is hiding. Shehu midat emet. That's the attribute of truth. And again, that is being hidden from him. He's not receiving Hashem's looking at you light, which is what you need, which is what we want, because that's how Shefa flows down. Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, V'hine kol ha'olam kulo nizon mishefa she'eret Yisrael kayadua. And behold, the entire world is sustained on an influx of the bounty from the land of Israel. Listen to how beautiful that is. The whole world is sustained on the bounty that comes from the land of Israel. And we learned that in Masechet Ta'anit in the Gemara, page 10b. We learned about how the Jewish people, we get the bounty. It comes through the land of Israel. And then from there, the whole world is sustained through the land of Israel. We learned about that there. Be'eretz Israel be'atzmo mekabel hashefa min emet. And we learned this, the land of Israel itself. It receives the bounty from truth. Keshenemar, as we learned in the Pasuk in Mika, titen emet leYaakov. So once again, what is that all about? Yaakov, it says that Yaakov recited Yoshbecha Ba'aretz. Yaakov was on top of the land. And we learned about this from a Kabbalistic level. Again, I don't have all the graphs here on me right now. Feel free to go back to the other classes. That if Yaakov is right here, he's on top of the land of Israel. And we learned that the Shefa flows down. All these Sfirot that make up Yaakov Avinu are on top of Malchut. Malchut is the bottom, it's where it receives. Malchut also represents the land of Israel. And we see that the land of Israel, where does it get its bounty? Where does it get the Shefa? It comes from truth. And who represents truth? Yaakov Avinu. And that's where there's a puzzle that says, Titen emet leYaakov. That's where it comes from. Behu midat tiferet. Yaakov is also this concept of tiferet. Tiferet is one of the Sefirot. We have Chesed on the right-hand side, represented by Avraham Avinu. You have Gevura on the left-hand side, which is Yitzchak Avinu. And we have the middle, we have the middle one of both, which is called Tiferet. Tiferet is represented by Yaakov Avinu. Shehu Klalin Hagvanim, which is an encompassing of the colors. We learned about this also. There's another conceptual Kabbalistic idea that Yaakov represents all the colors. Tiferet is actually a mix. Every single sphera has a different color. Tiferet is a mix of a couple different colors. Now, we also tied that with Yaakov Avinu. Why? Because Yaakov Avinu is a representation of what? The 12 tribes. All of Am Yisrael is all embedded in Yaakov. We are all different types of Jews coming from all different different areas, right? We all make up this, so to speak, color scheme that represents Yaakov Avinu, which is interesting because Yaakov Avinu, what did he want, or what did he give to Yosef, who was really the person who wanted to continue that line of tradition, the number one line of tradition? He gave him the multicolored dream coat, right? He gave him a multicolored coat, right? Lots of colors, encompassing of the colors. So you can see that Yaakov Avinu represents that concept. That's what that means when it says the encompassing of the colors. And Yaakov Avinu also corresponds to Shamayim. Shamayim means heavens. Aish and Mayim, we learned. The word Shamayim is made up of two things. Aish, fire. Mayim, water. You guys seen my video of my house fire, right? My story is called Through Fire and Water, aka Shamayim, right? Now, in Masechet Hagiga, in the Gemara, right, it talks about how these two elements is what makes up the heavens, the firmament above, right? And these specific ideas of fire and water, right, when you put them together, it equals Yaakov. Why? Well, let's see. Aish, which is fire, is Gevura. It's difficult, it's strict, it's tough, it's judgments. And on the right-hand side, you have water. Water is chesed, it's kindness, it's good, it's love. Water is free-flowing, it's nice. You have water and you have fire. Put them together, it creates what? Shamayim. Therefore, just like Abraham represents chesed and Yitzchak represents gevura, put them in together, you have Tiferet, that's Yaakov. Same thing with Shamayim. Eish and Mayim, Shamayim, that's the middle, that's Yaakov Avinu. And this is also hinted to in the Torah. Let's look at the pasuk of Bamidbar. Eretz ochelet yoshbecha, a land that eats its inhabitants. So this pasuk, Rab Nosson says, "Dekashe henemet shemer raglim hotziu sheker mipicha." It's very difficult to understand this. Why? Yes, it's true. It says here regarding, by the way, where does this pasuk come from? A land that eats its inhabitants, right? So when the spies went into the land of Israel, when this is during the times of the desert, right? And they got into big trouble, right? Because what happens? They go in there and they ask them, so tell us about the land. And what did they say? It's a land that eats its inhabitants, which means what? They walked around all the land and they're seeing funerals left and right. Everyone's like dying. So they're like freaking out, right? That's happening. What they're not saying, and really what it says in the Midrash as well, or I think it's Rashi that says that, it says basically that God was doing a kindness for these spies because essentially they were making the people so busy into their funerals that these spies were able to walk the whole land without getting noticed or anybody looking to kill them. That was the chesed behind the fact that there were funerals everywhere. But the spies took it as like, there's funerals everywhere, you're going to die if we're going to go here to this land, right? So Rabbi Nosson says on that, it's difficult to understand. Yes, it is true that the spies said something false, right? They're basically were not lying. The land of Israel is great, and they were saying something false. But the question is, how is it possible that these spies, they go in there and they're basically lying, saying that the land is not a good land, right? It's going to be very, very difficult for us. But the Torah is truth. Torah emet. The Torah is truth. How do you put a false statement inside of something that represents truth if everything in the Torah is true? How could a lie be written in the Torah, which is truth? It must therefore be that in these words is an allusion to something true. Now the Zohar asked a similar question regarding also Bilam the prophet, right? You know, Bilam, famous Bilam who tried to curse the Jewish people, right? How could such a person who represents so much falsehood appear in the Torah? Meaning there has to be something truth inside of him as well. So here, this is how Rab Nosson tries to like connect this to the Torah that we're learning. He's bringing this up. How is there something of falsehood in truth? So Rab Nosson says, "V'yesh l'ramez kanal." There is a hint of words mentioned above. Eretz ochelet. Look at that. A land that eats, because the pasuk quotes Eretz ochelet yoshbecha. Eretz ochelet, kelomar. So it says here, that is to say, its eating and bounty are from the aspect of its inhabitants. It's an aspect of Yaakov lived. Was explained he's an attribute of truth. Let me explain to you what this means so I can kind of make it all make sense, because it might be a little complicated as you're reading it. A land that eats. Eretz ochelet. Eretz ochelet yoshbecha. So Rab Nosson says, Kelomar shechilata v'ashpa'ata, hu mebechinat yoshbecha. The eating and the bounty of the land of Israel, where does it come from? Where is it deriving this idea of where it's getting its eating? Eretz Ochelet. Where is it eating from? Where is the land receiving its bounty from? Look at the pasuk. Eretz Yoshevet. Eretz Ochelet Yoshvecha. Yoshvecha means the concept of an inhabitant, somebody who resides on the land. Who resides on the land of Israel? Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu resides on the land. And we had brought a previous pasuk to support that Yaakov literally resides on the land. Yoshvecha does not just mean sit, it means to reside. So look at the pasuk again. A land that eats. Where the land is eating. Where does it get its sustenance from? From who? From Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov represents what? Yaakov represents Emet, right? That's why the pasuk is by Yeshev Yaakov. That's what it said. Yaakov Yeshev Yaakov. Yaakov settled in the land. Shehu midat emet. That's explained. He is the attribute of truth. So you can see here that the land really is getting its bounty, its energy from Emet, from Yaakov Avinu. That's why Eretz Yisrael represents Emet. Hugam Ken Bechinat Tefillin, and Yaakov is also an aspect of Tefillin, which we spoke about. Shenikraim Pe'er. We spoke about how Tefillin, right, is one of the symbols or the wordings of Tefillin is called a Pe'er. Pe'er means beauty. It's beautiful, right? Pe'er is a sign that enemies are going to be scared of the Jewish people when they wear this Tefillin, but it's beauty. Pe'er, in the same root, Tiferet, the word in Tiferet, Pe'er is in the word Tiferet. So therefore, Tefillin, which is Pe'er, is connected to Tiferet. And Tiferet is who? Yaakov Avinu. So that's why it says that Yaakov is also the attribute of Yaakov, which is Tefillin, which is Pe'er. Again, feel free to go back to all the classes before, and I'll make it more understandable. Then we spoke about the concept in a pasuk from Naphtali, one of the sons of Yaakov. The pasuk is that this is the blessing that Yaakov gives Naphtali. Naphtali is a hind let loose, which brings words of shefer. Shefer means acclaim, which means wow, amazing. So continues and he says, Al ken nikrat Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, the land of Israel is called Ayala Shlucha Hanotanim Rishafer. The pasuk that it's called a hind let loose, which bring words for worth of acclaim. And that's what our sages explained in Masechet Ketubot in the Gemara, right? They said that just like the deer, a hind is like a deer. It's the quickest of the beasts. The land of Israel is the quickest to ripen its fruits. Beautiful. That's why it connects it to that pasuk. And that's what our sages taught. Kilomar Eretz Yisrael, hiya yala shlucha lebasha paratecha. That's to say that the land of Israel is a hind let loose in ripening her fruits. And her bounty, which is Yaakov, it comes from Yaakov, it's from the attribute of truth. Shehu bechina tiferet, which is the aspects of tiferet. Bechina tefillin, the concept of tefillin. V'hainu hanotanim reishafer. And that pasuk which says, which bring words of acclaim, ki shefer hu lashon pe'er. We spoke about that, how shefer, which means acclaim, wow, so nice. It's the same thing as saying what? Pe'er. Pe'er is like beauty. Wow, she's beautiful. That's like an acclaim. It's like a shefer. It's both very saying like, wow, it's such a nice thing. Oh my God, everyone's talking about it. And we said that pe'er is like tefillin because pe'er is the wording, it's beauty. It's shehu bechina tefillin. V'yesh leramez, and then we also learned Naphtali hu otiyot tefillin. And in that pasuk, which says that Naphtali is an ayala, is a hind let loose, hanotanim reshafer, which brings forth of acclaim. Look at the word Naphtali. If you look at the word Naphtali, it's literally the same words as tefillin. So once again, Rabbi Nachman is just showing you all the connections that they all come together at once. Again, this is more of like a recap, nothing new that we have not learned. It's all recap of what's been going on that we've been learning. Ve'alze yesh leramez gamken, and there's also a hint of this. We learned in the pasuk in Kohelet, Re'eh chaim im isha. See to live a life with an isha. Live your life with a woman. That's the pasuk. And we learn ki isha rashi tevot hanoten imre shafer. What was isha? We also said that isha is like Torah. Again, it was brought down through Gemara, etc. Isha also means Torah. But look what it says. Ki isha, if we take isha and we break it down, aleph, shin, hey, it goes for hanoten. Aleph is imre. Shin is shafer. That same pasuk. Hanoten imre shafer is isha. Vehainu re'eh chaim. And that's what it means when it says seed of life. Ki tefillin nikraim chaim, because we spoke about how tefillin is life, which is my new bumper sticker. I'm going to put it in the back of my car. Tefillin is life, not football is life. Tefillin is life. Why is tefillin life? As he continues and he says, this is what our sages taught. Hashem alechem ichiyu. In Masechet Menachot in the Gemara, it says, "Oh God, with these things on them, they live." What does that mean? And we learned in the Gemara, these things that you put on them, they live, is what? Tefillin. Tefillin is something that gives you life. The darshu al tefillin. That's because that's what it said about tefillin. And then it brings you another reason. What does tefillin have anything to do with life? So it says, Ki tefillin b'ne'emar, v'ra'u kol amei aretz kishem Hashem nikra alecha. All the nations of the world will see that God's name is associated with you. Meaning, the whole idea of the tefillin is the concept that it says that everybody's going to be knowing who you are in regards to the nations of the world. Are going to be scared of you because you're putting on this tefillin, and that represents God's name. And we know that God's name represents emet, right? That's the essence of Hashem. He's just the truth, right? In other words, see to life, shehu tefillin, which is tefillin, right? So we know tefillin equals life. Im isha. Isha was the second part. Because look at the original, look at the back. Let's go back because I don't want you to get confused. It says as see to life with an isha. So now we just learned part one of this pasuk means see to life, to live life, aka tefillin, because tefillin equals life, right? And with an isha. Isha we just learned was hanoten imre shafer, right? And we learned that hanoten imre shafer, that's shehugam bechinot tefillin, which also corresponds to tefillin. If you don't understand that, feel free to go back to the old classes. It'll explain it perfectly. Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna do the last section here, and then after this whole section, we'll wait a little bit more, then we're almost done. About 10 more minutes. And that's the meaning of it's a land where you will not eat your bread in deprivation. That's what it says about the land of Israel. A land where you will not eat your bread in deprivation. Meaning what? A person who really connects to Eretz Yisrael, you're gonna want to eat bread, but you're not gonna want to have to overeat and go nuts on all the food that you want to keep eating. It's a place that if you just eat bread, obviously if you're connected on a high spiritual level, you're happy with that. There's no reason to eat more. You're satisfied. That's what the land of Israel provides for you. Kelomar Eretz. That's to say a land. Shehu bechinat emet, which is an aspect of truth. Be'az hu bebechinat ha'arat panat. He's in an aspect of an illuminated countenance. And what happens when Hashem gives you that illuminated countenance and you're feeling completely fulfilled with what Hashem has given you? Reinu bocher betaf nukim. Then it says here, you're not going to want to choose pleasures. Meaning you're so in focus in the spiritual that you're not so, oh my God, I have to have all my physical pleasures. Therefore, what does it mean that's a land where you're not going to eat bread in deprivation? Therefore, not in deprivation. Due to indigence and poverty. Where you eat your bread. But not other delicacies. Meaning what I was mentioning before. When it comes to people that eat bread, you associate, oh my God, he's only eating bread and water because he's poor, right? He can't afford eating other types of foods. Here, Israel's telling you, no, you don't understand. You're going to eat bread because you're going to be so happy. You're going to enjoy it. That's all you need. It's not about the food. It's not about the physical pleasures and the delicacies. It's about the spiritual aspects of things. And for that, that's what the land of Israel, that energy is going to provide for you. Rather, it's because he is in the aspect of truth. And therefore, you're going to be detached from the desire of eating, and you're going to choose to eat only bread. Now, I'm going to show you something really cool. Check this out. All right, here is a pasuk. Check this out. What did we say? Yaakov Avinu equals what? Emet. Yaakov Avinu is the one who sustains the land of Israel, right? It's that energy flow that's represented by Yaakov Avinu. Well, what a coincidence. Check this out, guys. This is in Breshit. And look what it says. Yaakov goes to sleep on that place with all the rocks, with the 12 rocks surrounded him, and he goes to sleep, which is located, right, in Eretz Yisrael. It says here. Look at number 18. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he put under his head and he set up as a pillar and he poured oil on top of it. This is when he wakes up in the morning. He was so incredible. Like, look how awesome this place is. And look what he says here. Let me actually just take this out here. He named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz. Yaakov then makes a vow saying, if God remains with me, protecting me on this journey that I'm making, and what does he ask for? And giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear. Wow. Couldn't he have asked for like meat or like something else? What is he asking for? Bread to eat. Why specifically bread to eat? It's that same concept. That same concept that Yaakov represents, that concept of eating for truth, for having Hashem's holy countenance come up on me, for the concept that I'm eating not for physical desire, but for the spiritual desire. Just give me the bread. That's all I need, right? You know, and also you think about when the Jews are in the desert, right? What were they eating? They were eating man. Man is what? It's heavenly bread. That's literally what it's called. It's lechem, bread from Shemayim, right? That's what they were living on for 40 years. Why? Because they're on a very high level of status of spirituality in the desert, right? So again, it wasn't having like all this crazy food. It really was just about having that lechem, that bread, the lechem from Shemayim. So you could see that really bread has everything. It's really a staple bread. Obviously, we could discuss gluten, not all that nonsense, but pure bread in its pure form, if done correctly, that's all you really need. And if I'm just eating bread and drinking water, to serve Hashem, that's really what it's all about. So now going back to the actual text. One second here. Okay. Israel, and therefore the land of Israel. Therefore, the land of Israel is called the and that's why the land of Israel, another wording of it, we learned this in Matoko Midvash in the Zohar. Okay, the land of Israel is also called what? The land of the living. Beautiful. You're really living life in Eretz Israel. Going to be another plug for Eretz Israel. You're really living life in Eretz Israel. And by the way, I speak to many people there. And everybody tells me, you're really living life. It's truth. Because the bounty is from the attribute of Yaakov. Like I said, Yaakov represents Emet. The bounty is coming from him. Shenemar Alav, Yaakov Abinu lo Emet. Very famous pasuk in the Gemara. In Masechet Tanit, it says, Yaakov never died. What do you mean Yaakov never died? Last I checked, he was embalmed, he was eulogized, and he was buried, obviously, Ma'arach HaMachpelah. So obviously he's not. It means that Yaakov's spirit never died, right? And that's the same in this context we're talking about, is referring to the concept of spirituality of the land, right? Yaakov is this inhabitant, Yoshev, he's on the land of Israel, and he sustains the land, right? Because Yaakov never died. And that's why the Holy Land is called the land of the living, because Yaakov never died. Amazing. I love that. So therefore, Behugam Bechina tefillin, and it's also this aspect of tefillin, Shenikraim Chaim. And what else is life? Tefillin is life, aka Yaakov Avinu is life. Catching the hints here? Nimsa ki ha'oches b'midat emet. We see that when someone he embraces the attribute of truth, azai beparnasato berevach. Are you hearing this, people? You want to make parnasa in life? Stick to the attribute of truth. Ki hashpa midat emet. Because the influx of bounty, you want to receive bounty, you want to receive shefa, it comes from the attribute of truth, of Yaakov Avinu, of emet. And you want to, he goes, let's go deeper, right? V'zeh remez, and here we have a hint to this. We learned this also, kush takaye, truth stands. We learned about emet, right? We learned about, if you look at the letters of emet, all the letters have two legs, meaning each letter stands. Kush takaye, truth stands. Ki Rabbeinu Zichron Levracha, that's what our sages explained. Darshu al pasuk, they explained on the pasuk that kol hayekum, which means all the substances at their feet. We learned about this pasuk too. That is a man's money which stands him on his feet. What was this all about? So we learned regarding the concept that when Korach's and his followers were buried in the desert, it says that their substance at their feet went down with them. It's brought down. What does their substances at their feet represent? It represented money, as in man's money went down. So all the money went down with him. But here, what we need to learn is there's making the connection of what stands him on his feet. The substance at their feet, meaning what holds up a person? Money. Money is something that holds up a person, right? Like you say the terminology, why don't you help that person and help him stand him up on his feet? Which means what? Give him a loan, give him a job. Money is what helps you stand up on your feet. And that's truth. When someone who embraces the attribute of truth, as a kaye, what happens? You're standing. Just like emet has the two feet, so to speak, on each letter, and emet stands, truth stands. So therefore, that's also the same with your money. That's his money, which stands him on his feet. And therefore, your livelihood is going to be abundant. But falsehood does not stand. We learned that falsehood has one leg. And that's when he's in the state with the countenance. Hashem's countenance is not looking at you, and he's completely hidden from you. So you can see here, and really, I'm just going to go back to a very important concept, which are going to make you also start thinking once, twice, 3 times about it, right? Divine favor and bounteous livelihood comes from what? Also breaking the desire for eating. Because if I'm connecting to emet, if I'm connecting to the truth, and I want to connect to Hashem's countenance on me, you're going to break that desire for eating. And being steeped in the desire for eating, what does it do? It induces that it creates the concept of poverty. Hashem's countenance is hidden from you. Unbelievable. It's big chidushim, guys. Whoever would have thought you had told me, right? That you can, so to speak, figure out ways to start getting more parnasa, more bounty by what you're eating, how much you're eating. Who thought about that? Last paragraph. I'll call tsara shalotavo. That's why whenever there's any misfortune, gozrim tanit shalotavo. First of all, that there should be no misfortune. Chas v'shalom. What did the rabbis do? They decreed a fast. In Masechet Ta'anit, we learned that. What's the reason why we do fast? It's the reason we do is to awaken people up to do teshuvah, right? That's the whole point of fast. But when there's misfortune, things are not going right, the rabbis decreed a fast. Being that the Jewish people are suffering misfortune, they're in that state of a hidden countenance. Hashem is not looking at them, and judgments are falling upon us. Therefore, the rabbis decreed a fast, the shaver tavat achila, to break the desire for eating. That's when there are going to be these aspects of an illuminated countenance and showing of favor. And that's the aspects of mitigating and eliminating the judgments. And as explained above, how can I not favor them when they're so stringent with themselves, when they don't need anything just to bless me? That's what Hashem says. And we'll stop, I think, is really actually a great place to stop here right now. And then Bezrat Hashem, the next class, we're going to plow through and finish all of chapter 47, Bezrat Hashem. But again, recap. Let's just do a quick one more time, a recap and understanding what we're saying. Number one, again, based alone on what we just have brought up, to make it simple, connecting to truth, connecting to Yaakov Avinu, connecting to Hashem's countenance on us, connecting to miracles being performed through us. All of that is done through being able to control yourself when it comes to food. When Hashem sees that it's not about the food, but really I'm eating to serve Hashem, to be able to make an effort to bless him. And again, whether it's a regular blessing, a three-faceted blessing, an after bracha, or just a pure birkat hamazon, any of these ideas, if I'm eating for that purpose, Hashem loves it. The quoting is, how can I not show favor to them? Especially if you learn how to not overeat. It's a very well-known thing. I just actually read this, I think yesterday, that when somebody serves you a plate of food, if you're going to serve yourself something, don't leave the plate completely finished. Leave something in the corner as a showing, a reflection, a representation, a symbolism. Look, I'm not here to eat the whole thing. I'm not going to, I want to show that I'm going to control myself, that even though there's a little bit left on that plate, I'm going to control myself and leave that on the side. That's a beautiful thing, and it's really much connected to what we're talking about today. So Bezrat Hashem, I'm speaking to myself right now. Just want to make everybody clear, this whole lesson is just for me, that I need to constantly think about these things consistently. And again, one more thing that's very, very important is the concept of parnasa, of livelihood, to be connected to truth, to try to be a truthful person, to try to do business in a truthful, honest manner. I think in everybody's businesses, everybody has different ways of how they are. Whether you're selling merchandise and you want to try to come up with a different way to sell it. If you're, sometimes people embellish things a little bit more. You can pick your poison however you want to in regards to what happens in business, right? The solution's right here, guys. Connect to truth, bounty, and livelihood will come, which really means trust in Hashem. Trust in Hashem, be an honest person, deal with people honestly, and Hashem will bless you. And that's all we can really get from all this. Obviously, there's so many details in the Torahs regarding the psukim and the connections. Again, go back to all the classes, you'll see. But that's really the essence of what we've been learning. And again, Bezrat Hashem will finish it all up at the end with more ideas and more concepts to bring this home. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's class, Bezrat Hashem, and hopefully next Tuesday night we'll get back at it. For those that want to hang around and talk for a little bit, feel free to stay on the Zoom, and I will open up the floor if you have any questions or comments. Thanks, guys.